What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
Technology. The car is created on the Ford EUCD platform and is based on components from Ford, PSA, and Volvo for the second generation. Freelander used elements of other brands available for this platform. But Freelander has nothing in common with other Land Rover models, except that some components of electronics are similar to those used in later models. Its relatives include Ford Mondeo and S-Max Galaxy, and at the same time almost all Volvo models from 2006 to 2018. The commonality of platforms means very similar suspensions, drive elements, electronic components, as well as motors and gearboxes. Thus, the 3.2 engine here is from Volvo, DW12 series diesel engines are Peugeot Citroën developments, and the 2.0T engine is Ford's EcoBoost. Aisin automatic transmissions were used on both Volvo and Ford. M66 automatic transmission is also from Ford stocks. There is a commonality with the D8 platform, on which Range Rover Evoque was made, as it is a product of EUCD evolution, and many elements in it are compatible with older versions. In terms of design, the Freelander 2 is a typical crossover. The body is offered only in a 5-door version, although for England and Denmark were offered also vans, due to the peculiarities of taxation, which we have almost no chance to meet here. The body is all steel, except that the hood is aluminum. The structure is seriously strengthened for the possibility of constant operation on off-road, so the mass of the car is very high, by the standards of the class. The arrangement of the power unit is transverse, row and line, and an inline 6-cylinder engine can be placed under the hood. Drive is front-wheel drive with all-wheel drive via Haldex clutch in almost all versions, except for the Rared 4, which is satisfied with front-wheel drive only. Suspensions, front and rear McPherson, which is generally atypical for this platform. Usually there is a multi-link suspension at the rear, but LR was not satisfied with its working moves. In terms of electronics, the car is quite advanced. The degree of integration of elements is absolutely modern. It was seriously upgraded twice during the model's production, in 2010 with restyling, and then in 2013. Timeline October 2006. The model is presented to the public. The base motor is 2.2-litre diesel DW12 in 150, 160 and 190 horsepower variants, as well as gasoline motor 3.2 at 233 horsepower. All motors are available with a 6-speed automatic. The diesel can also be equipped with a manual. All versions of the car are all-wheel drive. May 2007. Sales have started in Germany and the USA. May 2009. Small design changes. New versions of automatic transmission with support for start-stop systems. New clutch for rear axle drive. Now it is Haldex 4. August 2010. Restyling of the model. Small changes in appearance. New optics, bumpers, radiator grille. New interior, new multimedia system. Diesels were updated to meet -5 Euro standards. November 2010. Introduced ED4 version, C front-wheel drive, only with MKP and 2.2 diesel engine. November 2012. 6-cylinder engine 3.2 is replaced by a 4-cylinder supercharged engine 2.0 241 horsepower. October 2013. Minor restyling. Cosmetic changes to exterior and interior. New interior wiring, unified with Evoque. November 2014. Withdrawal from production. Bodywork. Exterior panels. Good appearance of the majority of Freels is a merit of high-quality painting and galvanizing of panels. Unlike many other LRs, there are no aluminum elements here, as already mentioned. Only the hood is made of winged metal, and the outer panels of doors, roof, fenders, all of it is steel. But, unfortunately, good coloring is not a panacea against corrosion in conditions of abundance of dust, moisture, salt, acidic environment. The edges of body panels are the most vulnerable. It is there that Freelander has visible rust. First of all, pay attention to the edges of the arches. The original protection in the form of rubber molding with reinforcement saves not badly from chips and dents in dry climate. But it collects moisture, and over time the steel reinforcement in the rubber also rusts, rasping it, making the fit on the edge loose. As a result, The arches of the front and rear fenders begin to rust almost first. Under the rubber, the process is hardly noticeable, but it will eventually come out. And successful cars are divided into those where the problem is not yet visible, and those where everything has already been corrected. By cleaning and installing a more successful protection of the arches. The only thing worse is the partially exposed inner edges of the rear arch where they are also covered by the door edge. They are located at the junction of the inner locker and the sill lining. They are clamped by the door seal from the outside, and the junction looks just inside the arch and is partially covered by the seal, which accumulates moisture and sometimes comes off by itself. Even with the seal installed, part of the metal is open and sandblasting destroys the paintwork. Many owners prefer to remove this protection of the arches altogether, replacing it with a layer of bituminous mastic. Without it, the edge is ultimately more intact. In general, dirt under the lockers is another typical problem of the car, and in the rear and front arches accumulate an incredible amount of wet earth, especially for those who drive off-road. Of course, this is not conducive to the normal preservation of the bodywork, and often the problem is clearly visible from the outside when the door is open. The sill is rusting, rust is climbing upwards from under the plastic lining on the arch. This is where the mud pocket in the arch meets the mud pocket inside the plastic sill plate. Unfortunately, the body problems are not limited to the arches. On the rear door, first of all, the area under the visor of the license plate recess rusts. It is not fixed very well. Paint chips happen even on cars of the last years, and over time they become discolored. The bottom of the door also rusts along the bolt, but much later and less often. Side doors are not bad. The bottom is covered with plastic successfully. There is almost no corrosion under it, and the sill is not visible. It is hidden under the door. But around the door handle openings you can sometimes notice swellings. The plastic cover of the handle is rigid, but it is a bit movable and scratches the paintwork. A little corrosion can sometimes be found on the front edge of the roof and at the attachment points of the roof rails. Sometimes windshield frame suffers. The glass is changed often, and damage to paintwork is common, so over time the frame gets one or two problem spots. Otherwise, the car usually looks good from the outside. The paintwork retains its shine and color. From underneath, all the problems with the arches look much worse. If you remove the lockers and shake out a ton of dirt, there's a good chance you'll see a very unpleasant sight. Even cars stored in a garage and from very corrosion-friendly regions, e.g. Samra, have a lot of pitting and paintwork damage inside. This is in addition to the rusty edge of the arch. In pre-resto cars from Moscow and St. Petersburg, and even periodically going out on dirt roads without regular washing of the body from below, the corrosion will look terrible, taking the area around the mud pocket at the junction of the sill and the arch in front and almost the entire niche under the taillights. And at the same time, the gland of the wiring on the Parktronics, the joint of the arch and the spar, the area above the adsorber. In the right arch and a symmetrically located niche in the left, especially since there are still drain plugs on the edge of rust. Glass suspension in the upper part. I remind you that the rear McPherson, especially at the junction of the inner arch and the side panel of the body, is also blooming. There is a lot of rust even in cars after restyling, and only the thickness of the metal saves the car. Almost everywhere so far is without perforation. Only around the plugs may need welding. The situation is better in the front arches, but the suspension cups are also rusting from inside. On the right is the preheater exhaust, often found as part of the kit, and it too is usually rusty. The seams inside the front arch are usually more intact due to the higher temperature and therefore less moisture. The underbody suffers again mainly in the rear. The underbody panels, the area around the gas tank, the side surfaces of the spars, the transverse beam over the rear suspension subframe, the body beam in front of the rear suspension longitudinal arm attachment points, all this is most likely already rusty. The floors and longitudinal members are luckier. They are covered with plastic and rot rarely. But the sills under the overlays are often already holy. Almost all cars from cold regions, especially from St. Petersburg, have similar problems. The difference is only in the degree of damage. Somewhere you can do with cleaning and antica, somewhere you need to remove subframes and fuel tank with sandblasting of all surfaces, and somewhere you will have to weld the sills and do something about corrosion inside the rear spars. Unfortunately, Freelander 2 is the car, when buying which you will have to go on an elevator, in order not to make a mistake with the choice. And you will not be able to do with a phone and selfies with a stick. It is too dirty. It is necessary to inspect the body very deeply and carefully. Removing the lockers and rinsing the arches is highly desirable. Inspection of the body floor for moisture is a must, as this is a Land Rover, albeit a small one, so the chances of it having been driven off-road and drowned in rivers are quite high. The body itself is not prone to leaks, and wet floors in front occasionally happen because of clogged drainage of air conditioner and moisture in the air intake of the fan. In case of incorrect assembly of the jabot after repair, water from the front windshield flows in there. In the legs of the passenger's left side, you can bend the carpet and check if the drainage is clogged and if moisture has accumulated. There, it is better to prepare a rag or a glass. 100 to 200 milliliters of water can drain from the air conditioner case. The trunk is mostly dry, if there is no arch perforation. The upper stop light leaks, but mostly all moisture stays inside the tailgate and only drips a little onto the trunk curtain. Still, it would be better to seal the trunk. The body will be safer. And if it is damp there will definitely be problems with electrics. The control unit of the all-wheel drive clutch is located right next to the spare wheel niche. It is unlikely to be possible to look under the side trunk linings to check the condition of the seams of the rear suspension cups, as everything is assembled to perfection. In the engine compartment, problems are rare, unless the car has been in serious accidents. Seams themselves do not rot, even glasses in the places of support hold well. Attention should be paid only to the overmotor niche. The drain from it is not very good, it is deep, and there can be several litres of water, and next to the brains of the engine, and in diesels also the glow plug control unit. Body equipment. The car, as already mentioned, is made quite firmly, but there are enough typical problems. For example, LR emblems on the outside are flying off, especially the side emblems. The paint on the radiator grille and on the side gills is peeling off. Door locks have unsuccessful motors. Here, strangely enough, Chinese analogs are more reliable than the original. Reassembly is not too difficult. You can remove the lock yourself, but in case of rear doors it is very troublesome. The rear door lock button fails, and there is no reliable analog solution. The rear wiper is weak, breaks gears and gets stuck, or in the reverse order. Noise-insulating mats of an engine shield and a cowl come apart and lose appearance. And on 3.2 engines, the mat falls on the exhaust manifold, which can lead to fire. Headlights are always lensed, both halogen and xenon, but lenses are unsuccessful in any case. They burn out early, and in most cars. Headlights simply do not shine. According to statistics, halogen headlights lenses go away faster, all other things being equal. It's good that to replace the lens you don't need to remove the glass. The hatch is very large, so it's relatively easy to put a new module. Very strange headlight washer system, with separate pumps and valves for each headlight, and even controlled by electronics, which sometimes also contributes to system failures. Fog lights are a consumable, and it is recommended to change them to LED modules from one famous French manufacturer. They are almost not flowing and are not afraid even of Fords. There are a lot of cars with Webasto heater, and it is quite broken here. Most of the failures are related to the work of its electronics. By the way, you can check the performance of the system without a special scanner even in summer. It is enough to put a bag with something frozen to the temperature sensor under the left rearview mirror and wait until the temperature on the dashboard does not fall below 2 degrees Celsius, and then start the engine. The system will definitely turn on if serviceable and display a diagnostic message on the dashboard. Part original price of non-original 2 body parts front headlight xenon 108021 not available front headlight. Halogen 88 917 Hella 81 156 not available windshield 27 855 FYG 11024 AGC 12 431 front fender 35 464 2IG 26 568 Blick 45 509 front. Bumper 83 144 35 151. Cover. Not available hood 5647 not available salon. The British know how to make saloons. You can't take that away. Inside the Freelander is cozy, the choice of materials is not bad, and there are no special problems with durability. If deflectors were made well, and their handles would not fall out, the feeling of quality would fly up to the sky. On the pre-restyle, the plastic on many panels gets dirty very quickly, and after the restyling the texture was corrected a bit, and scratches became less frequent. The mats are almost not fixed, only the driver's one has standard fasteners, the rest are sliding on the floor. The seats have good durability, even the variants with combined upholstery with fabric in the center and leather on the bolsters. The all-leather material is more delicate. It cracks over time without maintenance, but if you regularly lubricate the leather, they are conditionally eternal. Except that the texture of the material rubs off, armrests sag, and the sidewall crumples against the plastic. Minus of seats is 1, passenger seat without microlift, and height is unsuccessfully selected, though here it is possible to put. Skids with elevator from Englishwoman, where steering wheel is on the right. And also for some reason they rarely put heated rear row seats, just a given, which is difficult to explain. The steering wheel to 200,000 mileage loses the texture of the finishing material, but still looks good, if you do not get dirty and do not scratch it. Scuffed steering wheels appear at mileage over 300 and lack of normal care. From specific troubles, it is possible to note almost obligatory breakage of a spring in a button of the selector handle, dirt in ventilation. Baffles, flying off handles of adjustment of baffles and scratches in air ducts at them. The small display of the multimedia system of the stock versions looks strange. It is possible to put something instead only with a frame, well, or we will have to choose a Chinese analog. It is difficult to install a multimedia system from the restyling, where large displays were more common, and at the same time stability and functionality are better. It is necessary to introduce a hefty piece of wiring with a new MOS bus for connection of all system components, and at the same time a new amplifier. But such operations are done, and it has no strong binding to onboard systems, and what is there is already hacked by enthusiasts of the model. The dashboard is reliable enough. Besides, clever heads have implemented Russification, deduced service data in onboard computer, made manuals on modernization of backlighting, quite traumatic for the panel. At the same time, skillful people have figured out how to put digital panels from restyling instead of native or, say, fully digital. And just dashboards with a large display from older Range Rover L322. The ceiling doesn't sag, the door locks only suffer because of the aforementioned electric motors. Everything else is well made. Breakdowns, if any, are due to rough handling. The climate control is quite stable. Occasionally there are problems with calibration of the dampers. This procedure is strange. You need to press the recirculation and econ buttons on a stopped car and turn on the ignition. In theory, the calibration should be performed, but often it can be done only with a scanner. The fan is not a paragon of reliability, but this applies only to the pre-restyle. It can be changed quite easily. The air conditioner of the car often fails. The clutch of the air conditioner compressor located at the bottom of the motor corrodes. In general, the contacts in the connector rot, less often, the wiring. Sometimes dirt gets into the clutch and it does not turn off or makes noise. Hoses on the heater in the version with 3.2 engine did not last long. After the first 6 to 7 years of use they started to leak. On both sides of these hoses have plastic fittings, so when replacing it is necessary to change the sealing rings. Saving money and using analogs in this case exacerbates the problem. On cars with diesels, this occurs, but much less often. Electrics for a rather fresh car Freelander has a lot of problems on the electrical part. They are approximately similar in all cars on the EUCD platform. First of all, poor sealing of connectors fails. They rot everywhere where there is moisture. Even the engine control unit on the engine panel sometimes suffers because of rotting pins in the connector, and the wiring from the glow plug control unit also suffers. The reason for this is the location of these units, straight up with the connectors under the windshield, and in humid climates water is constantly pouring down from above. On diesels, the DPKV regularly rots, also because of its location. It is low and vulnerable to water. Clicking relays on the right side of the fuse box in the passenger compartment is not a problem, but it is unpleasant. At least on the Freelander, water doesn't go into the fuse box through the washer wire, like on the Jaguar Parktronic systems, and not very reliable. Besides, they do not tolerate dirt. The system gives false positives. The wiring of the engine panel and the interior is rotten in places where mechanical damage through the fault of the user is excluded. In this case, the power supply schemes of the blocks are quite complex. It is not always easy to understand why there is no connection with the blocks or why the car does not start. Wiring to the fog lights and taillights, as well as to the control unit of the Haldex clutch, often fails due to corrosion in the connectors. On cars of the first years of production, it also affects the hood opening sensor. The throttle on cars with 3.2 engine also suffers from corrosion. Snail steering wheel with a sensor of its rotation, a consumable, serving about 80 to 120,000 kilometers, and it is not cheap. more than 17,000 rubles. Without Snail does not work the all-wheel drive and terrain response system. By the way, if there is a desire of an electrician, the part can be repaired. There are a lot of problems with the alarm system, its antenna, as well as with the Webasto heater control. And for normal connection to the heater control unit is not enough inexpensive set of Chinese clone called Mangoose and proprietary. Scanner SDD, you have to make a set of cable KKL from Volkswagen and cigarette lighter to work with proprietary software Webasto Thermotest. Telestart interface box for remote control of heating is extremely unreliable. Its antennas die and key fobs fall off. The Freelander has an overrunning clutch in the generator drive, which starts to slip a little bit at mileage 80 plus. Sometimes with a characteristic crackle, sometimes you can find out about its failure only when the battery is already dead. A new battery lives for 4 years at best. In most cases, the problem is regular undercharging and frequent operation of the heater. Intermediate result Freelander 2 is almost guaranteed to have a set of problems with the sills and rear arches, which should be solved without delay, so as not to engage then in large-scale welding work, or not to discount the already rotted car to a not too careful buyer tempted by the parade appearance. Outside, everything is usually decent. Or not to discount already rotted car not too attentive buyer, tempted by the parade appearance. Outside is usually all decent. The main thing here is that you yourself do not become such a buyer. Electrics, most likely, will also regularly demand money, but there is nothing you can do about it. That's the design in the next section. We'll be looking at engines, transmissions, and running gear. In conclusion, the Land Rover Freelander 2, while offering a blend of style and off-road capability, often comes with significant drawbacks. The recurring issue of rotten arches and a multitude of electrical problems can make ownership a challenging experience. Prospective buyers should approach this model with caution, ensuring thorough inspections and considering the potential costs of repairs. Ultimately, while the Freelander 2 has its merits, it's essential to weigh these against the common pitfalls to make an informed decision. Thank you for watching, and we hope this insight helps you in your car buying journey.